of Hebrews 11. An excellent lesson. If you've not watched, you need to. About faith being like duct tape. Um, we're going to finish off Hebrews 11, what many people refer to as the Hall of Fame of Faith. Um, with We're going to pick up. We're going to be talking about. They talk about Moses for a while, which is someone you would obviously associate with a Hall of Fame of Faith. I don't think you can call it that without him being in there, being mentioned. It's no surprise that he's mentioned a lot in Hebrews as such an important figure in the Old Testament, as someone who was the lawgiver, priest. He did so many instrumental things in the Old Testament and delivering the people out of Egypt. But first, talk about power. Talk about power and influence. Something that a lot of people think a lot of times is you need to have a lot of power to have influence. A lot of times what people will say now is, well, you have this platform, you should use it. You have this platform, you should use it. A lot of people say this about very big athletes, megastar athletes, just any kind of megastar celebrities. Like, well, you have this platform, you should use it to do this. Well, I think you should use it to do this. And while certainly in our world, especially today, but really always, people who have a lot of wealth, a lot of things, they do usually have influence in the day-to-day things in the world that we live in. People in government positions, they have a lot of influence and power, and they can use it to whatever platform they want. But when we look at the Bible, we see people who a lot of times did not have a lot of wealth always. People who weren't always in these positions, like necessarily with some political position, or sometimes we did have kings, but sometimes it's just people, normal old people like us. And what they were able to do with it is even more powerful and more influential than anything that any of these people that we were talking about before. Now, certainly, if someone is powerful and has that status, I do believe that they should use it for good. If I'd like to believe if I had one of those, that I would be able to reach people to preach the gospel. But what the Bible teaches us, and what this lesson reminds us of, is that despite if we have that huge platform or not, we still have the power and the influence to teach the gospel through our righteousness and through our faith. Those are the things that are powerful. Those things are long-lasting, and those things, as we see, a lot of times we don't talk about the power and influence of people from thousands of years ago that still have weight today. We do talk about these people, and sometimes they were just shepherds, just worked regular jobs. Some of them were kings, and all of them did amazing things through their faith to God and through their righteousness and being proved. So we're going to talk about Moses right here, right quick, in verse 23 of chapter 11 in Hebrews. If you have your Bibles, you want to follow along. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden for 3 months by his parents, because they saw that the child was beautiful, and they were not afraid of the king's edict. By faith, Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to be mistreated with the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He considered the reproach of Christ greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking to the reward. So, right away, it highlights Moses' parents. They refused the king's edict because they wanted their child to have that opportunity. And then having the opportunity, being in Pharaoh's court and being there, he rejected it. He rejected this. He rejected all this power, all this earthly power, like real power of Egypt, and did not cling to these pleasures of sin, these fleeting pleasures of sin, as the Hebrews writer words it. He knew these things were temporary. Instead, he considered the reproach of Christ greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking to the reward. So these earthly things, these things are going to fade. No matter how great, no matter how glamorous, no matter how striking and all of that, all those things are fleeting. The things that are important and the things that are long lasting and the things that will actually make an impact on this world are clinging to the teachings of Christ, clinging to God, and wanting to live that righteous life and doing the best that you can to do that. That leaves an impact of others and brings others to God and brings others to Christ and to that reward in the long term, not this short term having things, not having short term earthly wealth, not short term earthly power, but true power, clinging to real power. We continue here in verse 27. By faith he left Egypt, not being afraid of the anger of the king, for he endured to seeing him who is invisible. By faith he kept the Passover and sprinkled the blood so that the destroyer of the firstborn might not touch them. By faith the people crossed the Red Sea as on dry land, but the Egyptians, when they attempted to do the same, were drowned. By faith the walls of Jericho fell down if they had been encircled for 7 days. By faith Rahab, so we're switching up here to Rahab, the prostitute, did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. And it goes on. We talk about the judges, we talk about King David, and we talk about Samuel, who anointed the next king, and we talk about different prophets, and we talk about a lot of people who died for the cause of God, and died for their righteousness, and died for their faith. Immediately we see these people, and sometimes it can be a little difficult to even understand the circumstances that they had to endure. We don't have to endure most of the time. Things like in verse 37 when it says, they were stoned, they were sawn in two, they were killed with the sword, they went about in skins of sheep and goats, destitute, afflicted, mistreated. Now we don't know, a lot of times we don't know a lot about the beginning of verse 37. We don't know a lot about being stoned, sawn in two, killed with sword. We can imagine, we can have just great sorrow when we read those things. But luckily we live in a country where we can enjoy the freedom of having our religion and not being persecuted for it. Now, we do still suffer some persecution, because there are sometimes social persecution, and not to compare those two things, but that still is difficult. That is still hard when you are wanting to just fit in, but we're never designed to fit in as Christians. We are to stand out, and that's something that we have to remember as we bear that maybe social persecution or anything like that. Sometimes when you say that, well, that's not me, I don't do those things, there are going to be people that push back, and we will be afflicted and mistreated. Not like the people of this time, not these prophets, but we still do have to endure some things. And that's when we look at chapter 12, verse 1, the last verse we'll read here. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. So, all these great people that we study about in Hebrews 11, we talk about Abel, we talk about Noah, we talk about Abraham and Sarah, we talk about Moses, we talk about Rahab, we talk about Gideon, we talk about David. You know, these people who from all different walks of life did all these different things. We're talking about kings, we're talking about, people who did unsavory work that is even today considered very low, and all of these things. The Bible shows us people from all walks of life, but have one thing in common: their faith to God and their righteousness and their actual showing of their faith for God, no matter the circumstances. And they endured. And we have to endure as well as Christians. We have to endure. We have to endure people not quite understanding. We have to endure people not liking the things that we have to say, not liking the things that the Bible has to say, the things that God has to say. Those things aren't easy, but they are the things that are actually power. There is actual power, real power in this word. And those are the things that we need to remember as Christians, that this has power, this has this has impact, and the way that we bring it to people, that has power. And that's how we can demonstrate our faith and our righteousness to our God. So thank you guys, and y'all have a wonderful day.